Accountability and consistency are probably two of the most important traits. All the areas that my brother and I talk about, what I've realized, the common denominator between basically everything is how accountable do you hold yourself and how consistent are you. And I spoke about character in one of my last videos, and who you are behind closed doors versus what your reputation or perceived reputation are two different things. Your character needs to be something that's consistent, which ultimately should reflect what your reputation is. And today in church we spoke about hypocrisy, and it's something that I think is important to touch on, and a message that I wanted to share with you all today. And so the first thing I'll start off with is that the more you walk away from accountability, the weaker you get. So the more you justify doing one more thing, one more time, and it's not that bad, the weaker you actually become, the softer you become, and the more accustomed to giving in you actually become. And a lot of times what I say is that the more times you continue and keep down the path of doing wrong, the softer God's voice gets. And you don't really hear him as much because you keep justifying reasons why you should just do it one more time, or why it's not that big of a deal, or why what this person next to you is doing is so much worse. It doesn't compare to what you're doing. It's not as bad. You find a reason to justify. You're just really making yourself more weak. You're making yourself softer, and you're making yourself more accustomed to making the wrong choices, ultimately taking you down a path away from God. And so what I want to talk about is what was said in church. So Matthew chapter 23 verses 1 through 4, this is where it talks about hypocrisy, right? And a lot of outsiders, even myself, and really why this message resonated so well with me is because I did self-reflect. I realized that there's a lot of areas in my life where, especially in this now, I'm making these videos and talking about the Bible, doing the right thing, being accountable, being consistent, but I still find myself doing the wrong things and falling short, and falling into temptation and doing things that I probably shouldn't be doing. And our pastor gave a good example. You pull up to church, or as you're pulling up to church, right, the family may be fighting, or maybe someone cuts you off and you're ready to, get pretty annoyed or ticked off, right? But then you pull up to church and everything's all good, right? And then the minute you pull off from church and there's someone, does something that doesn't fall in line with what you would do or what you would want to do, and now all of a sudden that rage, that anger, maybe you use certain language like I do, or maybe you fall into temptation. These are all areas of hypocrisy, so we all constantly fall short. And the point that he made is that all Christians are hypocrites, right? Because ultimately we're never going to live up to the Word of God and what it says. But the goal is to live as closely as to what the Word says. And growing up, playing ball, probably the most important rule that I learned was going to college camp. A friend of my dad's, who is coaches in the NFL, gave us a rule. And that rule was to do right. And we all know what right and wrong is, right? But if there's one rule and the only rule is to do right, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. But with that said, as I'm taking these videos, I realize I'm not always doing right. And a lot of what I'm saying, I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. Do as I say, not as I do. And Matthew 23 chapters 1 through 4, Matthew chapter 23 verses 1 through 4 talks a lot about this. It says, Jesus says to the crowds and to his disciples, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. So for me, it was really a reflection point. Am I practicing what I'm preaching? Am I doing all the things that I'm saying and talking about in these videos? I try to, but every day, I struggle with certain things and definitely fall short more times than not. And I realized I really need to hold myself more accountable and become more consistent, as I mentioned in one of my last videos where I spoke about character. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 28, this really resonated well with me. everyone ought to examine themselves before they eat of the bread and drink from the cup. So really what this is saying, Paul was talking, and before you he was saying, before you give your life to Christ, make sure, have some self-reflection, have some, think a little bit about what you've done, reflect on it, right? Reflect on yourself. Are you doing the right thing? And, there's never going to be a perfect time to give your life to Christ. There's never going to be a perfect time to go and start a business. There's never going to be a perfect time to do anything, right? And I guess this is the last thing that I'll leave with. In sports, there's something called load management. So, in certain sports, guys will maybe not play in certain games or hold off, from going 100 miles an hour, giving 100% effort. And in life, as a Christian, in business, in all the areas of our lives, we can do the same, right? But what we have to be concerned with is giving 100% effort, keeping that character high, keeping yourself accountable, being consistent, because how you do anything is truly how you do everything, or how you do everything is how you do anything, right? And if you feel like you got to slack off in certain areas so that you can focus more on other areas. I know from like when I was in high school, I wouldn't, let's say there was a push-up club or a push-up contest, and I would always never do it because I was worried about the next day. Am I going to, mess up my bench or my workout routine, right? I needed to save my energy for the next day. But as Christians, as leaders, as men, as women, we need to devote our lives to giving 100% to Christ and giving 100% to doing whatever the tasks are that we have for that day. And so I'll leave you all with that. I hope you guys found value in my message today. Hope you guys self-reflect as I have and will continue to do, and ask for God's grace, because truly I know that I waver a lot more than I should, and especially now as I'm taking these videos and posting about the Bible and what everyone should be doing, I need to be practicing what I preach as well. And so I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you guys for watching. If you found value in today's video, make sure to subscribe and share it with a friend. Turn on the notifications. Leave a comment. We want to hear what feedback you guys have. Thanks again for watching. Have a great night.